The city had always been a place of constant motion, a symphony of hurried footsteps, honking cars, and neon lights reflecting off rain-slicked streets. But tonight, the rhythm was broken by the sudden fury of nature. The sky had darkened in an instant, transforming into a deep, angry gray, and within minutes, hailstones began to descend like tiny, icy missiles. Daniel Carter, perched behind the polished glass walls of his office on the 40th floor, felt a rare shiver of unease. As a CEO, he was used to making split-second decisions that could affect millions. But even his sharp mind couldn't shield him from the raw, unpredictable force of a storm. He watched from above as people scurried across streets, clutching umbrellas that buckled under the assault, their coats plastered to their backs with rainwater. Suddenly, a small figure caught his eye, darting across the street with no protection against the merciless hail. It was a little girl, no more than 7, her tiny frame hunched against the icy onslaught, her hands shielding her head. Something inside him shifted, a protective instinct that transcended his role as a businessman. Daniel pushed back from his desk, abandoning the security of glass and steel, and rushed toward the elevator. His mind raced through logistics and safety measures, but the sight of her trembling beneath the storm left no room for hesitation. He bolted down the stairwell, 2 steps at a time, adrenaline pumping, until he reached the wet, chaotic streets. The wind whipped at his coat as he scanned the ground, hail bouncing off his shoulders and striking with a sharp, stinging force. Every instinct screamed for him to be careful, to protect himself, but his focus was singular. There she was again, frozen in a moment of fear and vulnerability, looking lost amidst the storm. Daniel lunged forward just as a particularly large hailstone crashed near her feet, threatening to topple her. He scooped her up in one motion, feeling her tiny body shiver against him. The world seemed to narrow to just the two of them, the roar of the storm, the pounding rain, and the flashing lightning forming a chaotic backdrop to this singular act of rescue. The girl clung to him, her small hands gripping his coat, and for a brief moment, Daniel felt a connection that transcended explanation. She wasn't just a stranger, she was a living, breathing reminder of life's fragility, and the responsibility he had to protect it, not in boardrooms, but in the raw, unfiltered moments that truly mattered. "It's okay, I've got you," he said, his voice firm yet gentle, as if the words themselves could shield her from the storm. Her wide, teary eyes met his, and she whispered, almost inaudibly, "Thank you." The simplicity of those words struck him harder than any hailstone ever could. In that moment, the city's chaos faded, the storm's fury became background noise, and all that remained was the fragile warmth of human connection, a reminder that sometimes even the busiest lives could pause for a moment to do what truly mattered. By the time he carried her into the relative safety of a nearby building's lobby, rain and hail plastering his hair and clothes, Daniel felt an unfamiliar mix of exhaustion and fulfillment. His heart was pounding not from fear, but from the unspoken recognition that life often revealed its most profound moments in the most unexpected ways. The little girl had become, in a heartbeat, the center of his attention, and somehow, amidst the chaos of the city and the storm, he knew this encounter would stay with him forever. The warmth of the lobby hit them the moment Daniel stepped through. The revolving doors, a stark contrast to the icy hailstorm raging outside. The little girl trembled in his arms, her small body shivering as droplets ran down her soaked hair and coat. Daniel carefully wrapped his own jacket around her, feeling the slight weight of her fear, the tension in her tiny frame. He led her to a quiet corner near a seating area, where the fluorescent lights cast a soft glow over the polished floor. The hum of the building's heaters and the muted chatter of a few late-night employees created a comforting background, a safe bubble, far removed from the chaos outside. He crouched down to her level, careful to keep his voice calm and reassuring. "Are you okay?" he asked, scanning her tear-streaked face. Her lips quivered as she shook her head, her eyes darting around nervously. "Where's your mum?" Daniel pressed gently. She hesitated, as though weighing how much to reveal. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she admitted, She's not here anymore." The words landed softly, but the gravity behind them struck Daniel's heart with unexpected force. He felt a pang of empathy, memories of his own daughter flashing through his mind. He understood what it meant to be the adult, the protector, in a child's world filled with uncertainty. Then she said something that stopped him entirely. "But, My mom used to tell me about you, she whispered, eyes wide and earnest. Daniel's brow furrowed, confusion knitting across his forehead. About me? He asked, a note of incredulity in his voice. She nodded solemnly. She said you were always kind, that you helped people, even strangers, that you were like a hero. For a moment, Daniel didn't know what to say. He had always worked hard, straddling the responsibilities of running a company and being a single parent, but he had never considered that his actions might ripple outward, leaving impressions on children who had never even met him. He reached out and gently smoothed the hair from her forehead, feeling an unexpected warmth spread through his chest. "Yama," she said that, he asked, voice softer now, almost reverent. The girl nodded again, clutching his jacket tighter. Daniel realized that in this strange, serendipitous encounter, the world had conspired to bring them together at precisely this moment. She wasn't just a random child caught in a storm. She was a link to someone who had believed in him, admired him from afar, and had passed that admiration on to her daughter. He offered her a small smile, trying to hide the emotion that threatened to surface. "Well, your mom had good taste," he said gently. The girl giggled softly, the tension in her body easing just a little. Daniel pulled a chair close and invited her to sit while he knelt beside her, letting her sip a warm cup of hot chocolate he had grabbed from the lobby cafe. As the warmth spread through her fingers and her small frame relaxed, Daniel felt the weight of the evening, the storm, the chaos, the fear begin to lift. For the first time in hours, the world felt safe. In that quiet, glowing corner of the lobby, the little girl's trust in him was palpable. Daniel felt an unspoken responsibility, not just to protect her in the moment, but to honor the legacy of kindness her mother had spoken of. It was a lesson in connection, in the way one person's actions could leave an imprint on the lives of others, sometimes in ways they might never expect. For Daniel, it was a reminder that heroism didn't always come from power or wealth, but from simple, quiet acts of courage, that sometimes the smallest moments could have the greatest impact. The storm outside continued to batter the city, a relentless percussion of hail against glass and asphalt, but inside the lobby, a fragile calm had settled. The little girl sat on the edge of a low leather sofa, her legs swinging just above the floor, still wrapped in Daniel's oversized jacket. He crouched nearby, giving her space, but remaining close enough that she could feel his presence, the steady warmth of a human anchor amid the chaos of the world outside. Her wide eyes were filled with curiosity now, no longer clouded entirely by fear. And Daniel noticed how she scanned the surroundings, as though taking in a universe far beyond her small, storm-tossed moment. "What's your name?" he asked, softly, careful not to startle her. "Lila," she murmured, her voice tentative, like she was testing the ground before stepping forward. Daniel nodded, committing her name to memory as though it were a key to understanding this unexpected connection. He offered her a small smile. "Well, Lila, I'm Daniel, and it's nice to meet you." She tilted her head, her small hands fiddling with the edge of his coat. You work in that big building, don't you?" she asked, pointing vaguely toward the elevators and the steel-framed offices above. Daniel chuckled lightly, a rare sound that carried both warmth and exhaustion. "I do," he said. "I'm the CEO, which basically means I make a lot of decisions and try to make sure people get home safe every night." Lila's eyes widened at the word CEO, but she didn't seem impressed by his title. Instead, she tilted her head, curiosity sharpening. "Do you have a daughter?" she asked quietly. Daniel felt a pang of surprise at the question, quickly masked by a gentle nod. "I do," he said, his voice softening. "She's waiting for me at home." Lila's gaze lingered on him, and for a moment, the world felt suspended. His storm, outside, the pounding hail, the roar of wind, it all faded into insignificance. She began to ask questions about his daughter, about his life, and even about the stories her mother had told her. It was as if she were filling in a puzzle, connecting pieces of a past she could only glimpse through memory and second-hand tales. Daniel found himself telling her small things, what his daughter loved to draw, the bedtime stories he read, the silly songs they sang together. He noticed how animated Lila became, how she leaned forward when she imagined the stories in her mind, how her laughter, soft and musical, filled the space around them. The storm outside continued unabated, but here, in this quiet corner, time seemed to fold in on itself. The connection between them was subtle, yet undeniable. a thread woven of trust, shared stories, and the quiet acknowledgement of kindness passed from one generation to another. For Daniel, it was a lesson in perspective. His life, filled with boardrooms, contracts, and relentless schedules, suddenly seemed smaller, less urgent, compared to the simple act of being present, of protecting and comforting a child in need. Lila, too, seemed to understand something intangible, something larger than the moment. That kindness could be felt, remembered, and even shared across time. In her eyes, Daniel saw a reflection of the woman who had spoken of him, a reminder that even the smallest acts could resonate far beyond the moment in which they were given. Minutes turned to what felt like hours, and Daniel realized that he would remember this night, not for the storm or the chaos, but for the quiet warmth that had blossomed in a corner of his office. There'd be a testament to human connection, courage, and the unexpected beauty of shared trust. The hailstorm outside had not lessened. If anything, it had intensified, rattling against the glass walls with a relentless ferocity. Yet inside the lobby, Daniel and Lila had carved out a pocket of safety, a quiet refuge from the chaos beyond the doors. The little girl had settled, slightly, but her small hand remained wrapped tightly around his coat, a tangible connection that neither of them seemed ready to break. Daniel knelt beside her on the sofa, careful to keep his voice gentle, soft enough to counter the memory of the storm's roar. "Do you want to call someone?" he asked, hoping to offer reassurance without pushing too hard. Lila shook her head, her curls bouncing slightly as she looked up at him with a mixture of determination and vulnerability. "No, I just want to stay with you for a little while," she admitted, her voice quiet but steady. Daniel's heart clenched at her words, struck by the weight of trust she was placing in him. He was a child who had already faced fear and uncertainty, and in that moment, she had chosen him, an almost complete stranger, as her anchor. The gravity of responsibility pressed against him, but it wasn't suffocating, it was clarifying. This was why he had become a protector, why he had learned to balance power and compassion, boardrooms and bedtime stories. He offered her a small, reassuring smile. "All right," he said softly. "We can stay here together. I'll keep you safe until someone comes for you." Her face brightened ever so slightly, and she relaxed into the warmth of his jacket, her small frame finally sinking into a semblance of comfort. Daniel noticed the way her eyes, wide and curious, still flicked toward the elevators and the polished floors, as if measuring the boundaries of her newfound safety. The storm outside seemed less threatening now, reduced to the periphery by the warmth of human connection. Minutes passed in a gentle rhythm. Daniel sipped his own coffee, keeping one hand near her, just in case, while Lila gradually let herself speak more freely. She asked questions about his life, his work, even his daughter, weaving stories together as though testing the reality of the world she had only heard about from her mother. Daniel found himself sharing details he rarely gave to anyone outside. His immediate family, how he balanced the pressures of being a single parent, the little rituals that gave his life stability, and the ways in which small acts of care could ripple far beyond expectation. Lila listened intently, her eyes bright, absorbing every word as if there were precious secrets meant just for her. He realized that the storm, for all its ferocity, had created an unlikely gift, a chance to connect, to remind himself of what truly mattered in life. The building's hum and distant chatter became a comforting soundtrack, highlighting the contrast between human warmth and natural chaos. Lila's trust, her willingness to remain close, despite everything she had endured, awakened something in Daniel, a renewed sense of purpose, a reminder that heroism was not only in business triumphs, but in protecting, nurturing, and simply being present. As the minutes slipped by, Daniel understood that this encounter would leave an indelible mark on both of them. The storm would pass, emergency services would arrive, and the city would return to its usual rhythm. But in that quiet corner of the lobby, a bond had formed. It was a bond of trust, safety, and shared humanity, a reminder that even amidst life's most unpredictable tempests, moments of connection could offer profound, lasting warmth. By the time the hailstorm began to subside, the streets outside glistened with a slick, reflective sheen, the city slowly emerging from its frozen chaos. The roar of the storm had dwindled to the occasional patter of residual ice against the pavement, and sunlight, muted and golden, struggled to break through the retreating clouds. Inside the lobby, Daniel Cotter stood, his coat still damp, Lila's small hand reluctantly slipping from his as her guardian arrived. Relief flooded the woman's face as she rushed forward, enveloping the little girl in her arms, murmuring reassurances and soft words that only a parent could provide. Lila clung briefly to her, then glanced back at Daniel, her expression a mixture of gratitude and wistful attachment. Before the woman could pull her fully away, Lila reached up and wrapped her arms around Daniel, her small frame pressing against him in a brief but heartfelt hug. "Thank you for saving me," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, not from fear now, but from the intensity of emotion she felt. Daniel knelt to her level, resting his hands gently on her shoulders. "Always remember," he said softly, "kindness is stronger than any storm." His words carried weight, not just for her, but for himself, as well a reminder of why he had chosen a life of responsibility, protection, and empathy over indifference, even amid the relentless demands of corporate life. He watched as she finally turned to leave, her guardian guiding her carefully toward the exit. Daniel felt an unexpected pang of melancholy, a quiet ache that came with letting go. Despite the brevity of their encounter, the bond forged in those harrowing hours felt enduring. Lila had arrived in his life as a stranger, yet she had reminded him of the importance of being present, of acting decisively in moments of need, and of the small, human connections that could outshine even the most chaotic storms. As they disappeared through the revolving doors, Daniel lingered for a moment, letting the sunlight wash over his face. His thoughts drifted to his own daughter, waiting safely at home, and he realized how much more he valued each ordinary moment, each ordinary smile. The encounter with Lila had underscored the profound impact that a single act of care could have, not only on the immediate recipient, but on the wider ripple of life's interconnected stories. The little girl's mother had spoken of him as a hero, a man who had made a difference. Tonight he had lived up to that quiet legacy, and in doing so, had been reminded that heroism was measured not by accolades or wealth, but by the willingness to protect, to comfort, and to show kindness when it mattered most. Daniel turned back toward the window, watching the city gradually recover from the storm. The streets glistening under a timid sun, reflecting light like tiny shards of hope scattered across the pavement. In that moment, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, a subtle yet profound affirmation of the life he had built. The storm had passed, but the imprint of the evening lingered. The trembling little girl, her words of gratitude, the connection forged in an unexpected moment of peril. It was a reminder that life's most meaningful stories often began in the most unlikely of circumstances. With a deep breath, Daniel straightened his coat, feeling both the weight of responsibility and the warmth of fulfillment. He knew that, this night, this chance encounter, would remain with him forever, not as a tale of fear, but as a story of courage, human connection, and the quiet, enduring power of kindness. The city outside may have returned to its rhythm, but inside him, a moment of true humanity had taken root, leaving an unshakable mark that no storm could ever wash away.